Imagine being brutally dumped by your girlfriend on a rainy Manhattan street because you're poor. She calls you a loser, throws your cheap engagement ring in the trash, and leaves with a rich guy. Now imagine that same night, a beautiful female billionaire pulls up in a matte black Rolls Royce and asks you to marry her on the spot. But here is the catch. Neither of them knew they were both hiding the biggest secrets in New York City. This is the insane story of Ethan, a man who went from a broke orphan to the absolute ruler of a $50 billion empire, and the brutal revenge that shook high society Manhattan. If you think you know how this story ends, you are completely wrong. To the world, Ethan was just an ordinary, low-level tech developer, working 16-hour shifts at a struggling startup. He was an orphan, raised with no family, no money, and no safety net. But he had a heart of gold. For 6 long months, Ethan skipped meals and saved every single penny to buy a $500 diamond ring for his girlfriend of 2 years, Rebecca. Rebecca was beautiful, but her eyes only saw dollar signs. On her 24th birthday, Ethan nervously walked up to her desk and opened the tiny velvet box. He expected a smile, a hug, or a tear. Instead, Rebecca looked at the ring with utter disgust. She took the box, walked over to the office trash can, and dropped it right in. In front of all his coworkers, she mocked his tiny paycheck, telling him that her friends were getting Rolexes while he was giving her scraps. She told him his small-time dreams were suffocating her, and that she had found a real man, Brad, the arrogant son of a massive real estate tycoon. By midnight, Ethan was completely broken. To make matters worse, his landlord locked him out of his studio apartment, tossing his bags onto the wet pavement. Drenched in the freezing New York rain, Ethan sat on a concrete bench near Central Park, staring at his muddy shoes. He had absolutely nothing left to live for. But destiny works in mysterious ways. Suddenly, the blinding high beams of a $500,000 luxury car cut through the heavy storm. A brand new Rolls Royce Phantom pulled up directly in front of his bench. The door opened, and out stepped Chloe. She was old money, elegant, striking, and dressed in a high-end designer trench coat. But behind her perfect eyes, there was deep exhaustion. She walked straight up to the soaking wet Ethan and said, "You look like a man who has nothing left to lose. Am I right?" Chloe was not looking for a casual date. She was running out of time. Her grandfather's $50 billion will had a strict clause. She would lose her entire inheritance unless she married a normal, honest, lower-class man by the next morning. Every wealthy man in her social circle was a snake, trying to steal her family's empire. She needed a shield, a contract. She offered Ethan a simple deal: a roof over his head, unlimited food, and a clean slate. In return, he had to sign a marriage certificate. The rules were simple. They would live like a normal, struggling, lower-middle-class couple to avoid suspicion from her family, and neither would ask about the other's past. Ethan, with nowhere else to go, looked into her honest eyes and accepted. For the next 2 months, Ethan and Chloe lived in a tiny, rented brick apartment on the outskirts of the city. To keep up the facade, Chloe traded her Chanel dresses for basic clothes from Target, pretending she used to work at a local diner. Ethan went back to coding on his cheap laptop at the wooden kitchen table, never complaining. But living under the same roof, pretending to be husband and wife, something changed. They started sharing small moments. Chloe would burn the morning coffee, and Ethan would laugh, teaching her how to do it right. Chloe watched Ethan work late into the night, admired his brilliance, and wondered why the world had been so cruel to him. One afternoon, while cleaning the kitchen counter, Chloe found an old, tarnished gold pendant chain. It was hidden inside Ethan's old bag. The pendant had a rare, highly intricate crest carved into it, a fierce lion holding a golden sword. When she asked him about it, Ethan's smile faded. He gently took the chain, telling her it was the only object he had when the orphanage took him in as a baby. It was his only connection to his biological parents. To Ethan, it was a worthless piece of junk. But Chloe stared at the crest, her heart skipping a beat. She recognized that crest. It belonged to the most powerful, mysterious family in the country, but she kept quiet, urging Ethan never to lose it. A week later, Reality crashed back in. Ethan was walking out of a local grocery store, carrying heavy bags in both hands. Suddenly, a sleek sports car sped past him, splashing dirty puddle water all over his jeans. The car slammed its brakes. The window rolled down, and there they were, Rebecca and Brad. Rebecca laughed hysterically, pointing at Ethan's wet clothes and calling him the local charity case. Brad leaned out, mocking him for doing the heavy lifting in society while they were on their way to the Apex, the most exclusive 5-star Michelin star restaurant in Manhattan, where a reservation required a $10,000 membership. They drove off, leaving Ethan standing in the mud. But this time, Ethan didn't look broken. His eyes burned with a silent, cold fury. That very evening, Chloe surprised Ethan. She told him she wanted to go out for a nice dinner and handed him a simple, off-the-rack blazer. Chloe wore a basic, unbranded black dress. They caught a cab and arrived at the exact same location, the Apex.
Inside, the atmosphere was dripping with luxury. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, jazz music played softly, and billionaires talked in hushed tones. At a prime table near the center, Rebecca was busy flaunting a new designer handbag, taking selfies for her social media. Suddenly, Rebecca froze. She saw Ethan and Chloe walking through the front doors. Brad immediately snapped his fingers, calling the head waiter over to their table. In a loud, arrogant voice, Brad demanded that the staff kick the vagrants out, claiming Ethan was a broke coder who couldn't even afford the bottled water at the Apex. But the waiter looked at his digital tablet, turned pale, and politely informed Brad that the couple was actually booked for the owner's private VIP suite. Rebecca could not handle it. Furious and jealous, she marched over, intercepting Ethan and Chloe before they could cross the VIP line. She loudly accused Ethan of stalking her, claiming he was pretending to be rich just to win her back. She turned to Chloe, insulting her cheap thrift store dress. But Chloe didn't flinch. She stepped forward with a cold, terrifying smile and told Rebecca that her dress might be cheap, but Rebecca's personality belonged in a dumpster. Brad stepped in, getting aggressive, threatening to make one phone call to his father to ensure Ethan lost his tech job forever. Ethan stood tall, looking down at Brad with absolute calm, and said, "Call him. Let's see what happens." Brad smirked and dialed his father, the real estate tycoon. He proudly told his dad that a broke loser named Ethan was disrespecting him at the restaurant. But within 3 seconds, Brad's face turned completely white. The father was screaming through the phone, terrified. The father yelled that the massive Sterling Global Syndicate had just bought out their entire banknote. If Brad didn't drop to his knees and apologize to whoever was standing in front of him, their entire family would be completely bankrupt by midnight. Brad dropped his phone. It shattered on the marble floor. Rebecca was confused, demanding that Brad stand up for himself. But before anyone could move, the heavy glass doors of the private VIP elevator opened. The entire restaurant went dead silent. Powerful CEOs and old money billionaires stood up out of pure respect. Walking down the main aisle were Arthur and Eleanor Sterling, the undisputed rulers of the Sterling global empire. Rebecca, seeing her chance, stepped forward, trying to use her charm to greet them. But the Sterlings walked right past her, treating her like absolute invisible air. They stopped directly in front of Ethan. Eleanor Sterling's eyes locked onto Ethan's chest. There, hanging over his simple blazer, was the gold pendant chain Chloe had polished and insisted he wear tonight. Eleanor gasped, her hands covering her mouth in pure shock. She looked at her husband and whispered, "Arthur, it's the lion and the sword. It's him." Arthur Sterling, a man known for his cold, ruthless business mind, broke down in tears. He looked into Ethan's eyes and told him that for 24 long years, they had never stopped looking for him. Ethan was stunned, telling them there must be a mistake, that he was just an orphan. But Arthur explained the truth. 24 years ago, their private family jet was sabotaged. They thought they had lost their only infant heir in the crash. That pendant was the unique, irreplaceable royal seal of the Sterling bloodline. Ethan wasn't a nobody. He was the sole heir to a $50 billion empire. The restaurant erupted into chaotic whispers. Rebecca looked like she had just seen a ghost. Her knees trembled as she realized the man she threw away was now the most powerful man in the city. But the twists were not over. Chloe stepped forward, introducing herself to Arthur Sterling as Chloe Vance, the granddaughter of the legendary Vance Group founder. Arthur smiled warmly, realizing that his newly found son had unknowingly married the most powerful heiress in the country. They had both hidden their wealth to find true love, and destiny had brought them together. Ethan turned his gaze toward Brad and Rebecca. They looked like small, helpless insects shivering in the corner. Rebecca fell to her knees, crying hysterically, begging Ethan for another chance, claiming her family pressured her and that she had always loved him. Brad trembled, begging for his father's company. Ethan didn't feel anger. He only felt disgust. He looked at the head waiter and calmly ordered the immediate cancellation of every single contract the Sterling and Vance Groups had with Brad's family. He then ordered a permanent, worldwide ban on Brad and Rebecca from every luxury hotel, restaurant, and property owned by their empires. With a simple wave of his hand, security guards grabbed the screaming, crying couple by their arms, dragging them out of the elite establishment. Outside, Rebecca and Brad were thrown onto the wet, muddy pavement, the exact same spot where Ethan had been left to freeze months ago. Her expensive dress was ruined in the mud as she looked up through the glass windows, watching the entire elite society toast to Ethan and Chloe. Inside, Ethan raised his glass of champagne to his beautiful wife, celebrating a new beginning and a true empire. They thought they could break him. But in the end, the pawn became the king.